Inside the house of the B-rank adventurer party known as God's Hand, located in the capital city of Ramla, Rahito is abruptly confronted. A large, clawed hand looms over him as an unseen figure declares that Rahito must leave the party. Stunned, Rahito can only stammer in confusion, while his small companion, Aniki, watches from atop his head. His party members are identified: Riramu the mage, Ritensu the swordsman, and Winto the ranger and leader. Rahito himself is an enchanter. He recalls how, 2 years prior, the guild master had introduced him to the then C-rank trio, asking him to mentor the veterans. Aniki silently reflects that it was Rahito's support that allowed them to reach a level comparable to A rank. He remembers how they all shared the same dream, how he absorbed their stories and grew alongside them as they climbed to B rank. He had truly believed they were his companions. But that illusion shatters when Riramu coldly states that he is the reason they are stuck at B rank. Realizing they have all changed, a resigned Rahito simply agrees to her words. As he turns to leave, Aniki asks him to retrieve something. Rahito's gaze falls upon the table they're gathered around, the same one they always used during camps. He recalls a tradition from his hometown, carving the names of lifelong friends into a table to solidify their bond. He had once asked his party if they could do the same. They had put him off, suggesting they do it someday, perhaps when they reached A rank. The memory fuels a sudden rage. Realizing they have no intention of ever seeing him again, he decides the promise is meaningless. With a furious shout, he shatters the table with a single, powerful kick. The wooden planks splinter across the floor. Ritensu calls his actions excessive, and Riramu claims she's never heard of such a thing, a sentiment with which Ritensu seems to agree. Kneeling amidst the wreckage, Rahito holds up a piece of the broken wood. He looks up at his former comrades and tells them plainly that he is, in fact, the nuisance. He walks away with a smile, telling Aniki that he won't forgive them. His companion, whose name is revealed to be Tsuku, agrees. Tsuku is a level 20 Cositus demon, Rahito's partner since he was 20. It was always Tsuku who aided him with support magic whenever he collapsed from the exhaustion of preparing meals for the party. Walking through the town streets, Rahito reflects on their audacity, considering the house they kicked him out of is his own property. He admits to himself that he may have been too soft on them, a thought Tsuku echoes, calling him too kind. He also remembers that Winno never paid back a loan before stopping and pointing down a particular street. He turns to Tsuku, apologizing for his foul mood and admitting he hasn't eaten since morning. He suggests they find a place to eat, and Tsuku enthusiastically agrees. He and Tsuku sit down to a meal, a steaming bowl of green rabi and herb soup placed before them. The dish features meat from a green rabi, a rabbit-like monster commonly eaten in the region. With an eager expression, he tells his companion to eat up before taking a hearty bite himself. The flavor is exquisite, and he exclaims in delight. Tsuku, curious, asks about the herb in the soup. Rahito identifies it as Yule herb, a plant typically used in recovery potions, noting its faint, refreshing aroma. As he finishes his meal, he reflects on the green rabi meat, tender, not at all gamey, and rich in magical power. His thoughts drift back to his past. At 16, after losing his parents to illness, he came to the capital to become an adventurer. Now, at 24, he finds himself adrift, wondering what to do next. Tsuku asks if he plans on going to the guild. His journey began with the skills granted to him, gifts from God in this world. He received appraisal, a skill not suited for direct combat. To make himself useful, he chose to become an enchanter, a profession dedicated to enhancing the abilities of others through support magic. This path was not an easy one. Enchanters who only use support magic are generally unpopular, as most parties prefer members with offensive capabilities. Believing no one would want him, Rahito took on every conceivable support role: cooking, cleaning, information gathering, negotiations, anything to prove his worth while he searched for companions. His companion interrupts the somber recollection, pointing out that Rahito's desperate attempt to be useful to everyone was precisely what led to his current situation. Tsuku suggests that perhaps Rahito no longer needs to be in a party at all. When Rahito asks what he means, Tsuku bluntly states that he is far too kind to others. He continues, his voice rising with passion. Tsuku explains that while being a support is important, what truly matters is what Rahito himself wants to do. He urges him not to get lost in complicated thoughts and to focus on his own desires. The creature's words strike a chord. Rahito ponders what he truly wants, but admits he doesn't know. He has no desire to form a new party and start from scratch. With his old party now A rank, they'll be busy in the capital. This sparks an idea. Perhaps he doesn't need to stay in the capital at all. He could relocate to a base in the countryside. Tsuku seizes upon the idea, noting that the countryside would be much cheaper than the capital. Rahito agrees, deciding to check a map at the guild to plan their next move. He resolves to go, then pauses, stroking his chin as he considers the daunting prospect of navigating unfamiliar territory. Inside the guild hall, he examines a large map. The capital, Ramla, is centrally located within the Barisan kingdom. Considering the logistics of acquiring materials, his eyes are drawn to the kingdom's southern coast, which juts out into the Hakuya Sea. He spots the southeastern trade city of Hakuya, a 2-day carriage ride away. His destination is set. He gazed out the window of his new lodgings, remarking that being so close to the sea meant fresh seafood would be easy to come by. Suku, perched on the windowsill, asked for his thoughts on their new location, but Rahito remained silent, lost in thought. His attention shifted to a map spread out before him, his gaze drawn to a specific point marked with a star, Ru Village. The name seemed familiar, stirring a faint sense of unease within him. Suka noted that while the village was remote, it was conveniently only an hour's journey by carriage from the city of Hakuya. This train of thought pulled him back 5 years into the past. He recalled Minaru Air, a handsome and talented solo adventurer renowned for using attributeless magic. Rahito remembered having partied with him once, back when he was just a 15-year-old boy who had recently become an adventurer. He wondered what had become of Minaru, speculating that he must be a top-tier A-rank adventurer by now. Suku, however, brought him back to the present, asking why he wasn't considering joining a party to avoid trouble. Rahito mused that such unexpected connections often begin with a shared hometown. With this thought prompting him, he went to the Adventurers Guild. He approached the receptionist, explaining that he was considering a move to Ru Village and wanted to ask about a party known as the Wind God Spear. His inquiry seemed to startle the receptionist, whose expression quickly softened into one of relief. She exclaimed how glad she was to see him, noting that she had thought he was doing well. Her reaction left Rahito completely baffled. He felt a wave of relief wash over him. It was a comfort that she didn't press for details about why he was no longer with his party or try to stir up any trouble for him. The receptionist then provided the information he sought. Ru is a small village of 300 with its own guild branch. She recalled that the Wind God Spear was Winto's party and that Rahito himself used to handle all their negotiations. She then added a critical detail. The village sits in a forest on the border with a neighboring country, a place teeming with C-rank monsters that attracts many high-level adventurers. The news struck him with force. He stammered in protest, pointing out that he was merely a B-rank support class who had never once fought on the front lines. Despite his rising panic, the receptionist simply beamed, assuring him with unwavering confidence that it would be all right. He considered the village's defenses, realizing it wasn't just adventurers. There's also a knight's garrison to maintain order. Sensing his unease, the guild receptionist offered a reassuring smile. She acknowledged the high number of dangers, but insisted he would be fine. She explained that if he posted a recruitment notice, high-ranking adventurers would surely team up with him, leaving him with little to worry about. Later, at an eatery, Rahito let out a nervous laugh while holding Suku. The receptionist's words about C-rank adventurers echoed in his mind. From inside a mug on the table, Suku looked up, asking what was wrong and suggesting they find a more peaceful place. Rahito, now seated alone, briefly contemplated shaking his companion off. Suku, however, puffed up his chest with confidence, declaring that he could handle the things Rahito couldn't. Rahito looked on skeptically, wondering if Suku was just another support role, remembering how he'd been looked down upon by high-rank adventurers in the past for that very reason. His expression shifted as a thought occurred to him. He had to admit, Suku's support magic was exceptionally special. He mentally cataloged its effects, buffs to speed, power, magical resistance, and physical resistance, as well as an increase in the effectiveness of other magic. This was far beyond ordinary support magic. Then, a realization struck him. Suku's support magic wasn't limited to combat. It could be applied to food. He recalled how he would often cook during their travels, and Suku would enchant the meals. This simple act of applying layered enhancements to food made it more effective than potions, though the exact reason remained a mystery. Rahito laughed aloud at the memory. He remarked that at first, no one in their party had thought much of it, simply happy to be eating well. Suku retorted that he had noticed its significance, but Rahito never paid attention, even when potions were available. His amusement faded into focused thought. While recovery magic was common, support magic was not. Suku, sensing the shift, suggested that Rahito might have a talent for business. The creature then shouted his brilliant idea, a meal buff eatery for the many solo adventurers in Ru Village. The words meal buff hung in the air as Rahito processed the concept. Suku excitedly elaborated, a place where solo adventurers, who couldn't rely on party members for buffs, could receive them through enchanted food. They could even use the rich meat from monsters hunted by high-rank adventurers. It was, Suku declared, a surefire hit. Rahito stared into the distance, lost in thought. He mused on his skills as a popular enchanter, realizing he could likely make a living anywhere. But what was the point, he wondered, if he couldn't find a place where his talents could truly help people? His gaze fell upon the memory of a shattered chair, a stark reminder of his recent past. He decided, then, that if such a place existed, a place where he was needed, it would be a good thing. It was time for a fresh start. Meanwhile, the very party he had left behind was already feeling the weight of his absence. Winto questioned how they would properly vet and accept quests now. Retensu, looking downcast, worried about more mundane matters, asking who would manage their scattered belongings or clean their room. Riramu, turning away with a pout, lamented that she could no longer buy whatever she wanted, wondering who would now manage their finances. Their current struggles were a direct echo of a warning he had given them in the past. A memory surfaced of him serving them a meal, asking pointedly if they would even be able to eat once he was gone. Putting the memory aside, a sense of peace settled over him. He smiled faintly, realizing there was no longer any need to worry. With his mind made up, he turned to his small companion. "Let's go, Tsuku," he said with renewed purpose. He explained that their destination was Ru Village, a 2-day journey by carriage, a fairly long trip. And so they set off. As Rahito walked through the bustling town streets, Tsuku perched excitedly on his head, cheering for their departure. Rahito wondered aloud if the exorcist would simply vanish, ready to leave that part of his life behind. Their departure from the city marked the beginning of their journey. Aboard a horse-drawn carriage, they traveled through the countryside, the steady rumble of the wooden wheels marking the passage of time. After 2 days, they arrived in the lively port town of Haikia. The air was filled with the sights and sounds of the market and the harbor. Holding a sleeping Tsuku, Rahito paid a small fare, his journey nearing its end. Leaving the carriage behind, Rahito stretched his weary back from the long ride. But as he looked up, his fatigue was replaced by awe. "Whoa," he breathed, Tsuku stirring on his shoulder. "So this is Ru Village." He stood on a ridge, gazing down at his new home. The village of Ru was nestled in a wide valley, resting in the shadow of magnificent, jagged mountains that pierced the sky. He finally arrived at his destination, Ru Village, a quaint settlement nestled among rugged mountains, with a simple stone bridge crossing a gentle stream. The surrounding land was peaceful, with vast fields of wheat swaying under a calm sky. Taking in the view, he remarked that it was a nice place. He identified the golden fields as wheat, noting that it must be harvest season soon. Tsuku, perched nearby, observed that the forest was quite large and pointed out that the mountains in the distance likely formed the village's border. His gaze followed towards the towering peaks. He wondered aloud if that was the Yomi Forest, concluding that the village was far more peaceful than he had anticipated. With their survey of the area complete, he decided their first stop should be the guild. Tsuku, however, complained that his stomach was empty, reminding Rahito that they had only eaten bread during the carriage ride. He walked through the main street, surprised to find the village more bustling than he'd thought. As he passed, he overheard a local woman remarking that it was getting late to be heading out. Suddenly, Tsuku called out his name from his shoulder, excitedly pointing towards a building. Rahito looked up, realizing it appeared to be an eatery. A sign confirmed it was a 2-story inn. Tsuku cheered, relieved that they wouldn't have to worry about dinner. Rahito agreed, stating that finding a room for the night was the priority, and they should head inside. He pushed the door open and stepped into a silent hall. He called out tentatively, remarking on the quiet and wondering if anyone was even running the place. A latch clicked, and a young woman emerged from a side room, her expression one of surprise. Startled, Rahito asked who she was. He then quickly introduced himself and stated that he was looking for a room for the night, his voice echoing slightly in the quiet inn. She startles, asking if he is an adventurer. An older woman, the innkeeper, steps into view with a warm smile, apologizing for the surprise. The young woman explains that he just arrived from the capital, though she senses something is amiss. The innkeeper's friendly demeanor continues as she admits she hadn't noticed his arrival and confirms that, of course, a room is available. Her casual acceptance leaves Rahito momentarily speechless, only able to stammer in response. She then explains the reason for the inn's quietness. The cook from the nearby knight's garrison has fallen ill, and her husband is currently working there as a replacement. As a result, they are unable to serve any food. Rahito listens, finally understanding the situation. His attention returns to the younger woman, who adds that she's been managing the inn's morning and evening duties all by herself. She introduces herself as Hannah and extends her hand. As they shake, she mentions that most adventurers in this village are high-ranking and rent houses instead of staying at inns. He asks what his options are. Hannah informs him that lodging without meals costs 3 copper coins. The modest price makes Rahito contemplate the gravity of the village's location on the border with the demon world. Her expression becomes hopeful as she makes a tentative proposal. Perhaps he would be willing to rent the kitchen? She then quickly rephrases, offering a week's stay without meals as a simpler arrangement. A wide smile spreads across his face. He asks for clarification. He can cook for himself? He enthusiastically confirms that he's quite capable, having often cooked for his companions while camping, and even offers to prepare a portion for her. Delighted, Hannah hands him the room key while Tsuku celebrates their good fortune. His cheerful mood gives way to a more serious contemplation of the situation. The proximity of the knight's garrison to the Yomi Forest is a concerning matter, but for now, he decides the inn's operation is the priority. He turns to Tsuku, asking what provisions were in his pack, prompting a happy cry for dinner. Inside the kitchen, he prepares to cook. With a focused grin, he snaps his fingers, summoning a small, controlled flame to his fingertips as Tsuku watches. He uses the magical spark to light the stove and surveys the ingredients: firebird meat, onion, garlic, ginger, salt, pepper, and flour. He notes with satisfaction that they have a good selection. Hannah watches, amazed, asking what he's making, thrilled that she'll finally get to eat that. He cheerfully announces that he's making tsukun, beginning his work by finely mincing an onion as Tsuku watches intently from the countertop. The potent fumes from the onion quickly overwhelmed Tsuku, who wails with teary eyes. Unfazed, Rahito moves on to mincing garlic, then grabs a second knife, his expression turning serious as he prepares for the next step. With a flurry of motion, he uses both knives to mince the firebird meat, earning an impressed cry from Tsuku. As his hands begin to tire, Rahito briefly wonders if there's a butcher shop in the village before combining all the ingredients in a bowl, mixing them with salt and pepper until the mixture becomes sticky. He then turns his attention to another ingredient, the WEL herb. He inspects it, noting that the root has the strongest aroma and that, much like the flower, the fragrance is most potent closest to the ground. Recalling a technique he learned from a merchant, he shapes the mixture on his skewers and dusts them with flour. He explains to Tsuku that he's using the sturdy stems of the WEL herb as skewers, which will also serve to deodorize the meat. With 10 skewers prepared, he ignites a flame in the frying pan with a snap of his fingers. In no time, the Firebird Tsukun is complete. Rahito presents the finished dish with a proud smile as Tsuku lets out a jubilant cheer. Soon after, the three of them, Rahito, Tsuku, and Hana, are seated at the table, ready to enjoy the hot meal. The first bite brings immediate, immense satisfaction to all of them. Rahito notes that the rich flavor of the meat and fat is perfectly complemented by the refreshing aroma of the WEL herb, a use for the plant he'd never considered. Hana is visibly ecstatic, her face beaming with delight. He decides to check the properties of the food he created. His analysis confirms the ingredients and reveals an unexpected enhancement. A thunder-like fierceness has been imbued into the dish. Tsuku excitedly explains that it's a power-up magic. Rahito realizes that while the enhancement is random, it's a welcome boon. He reflects that with their arrival, Hana's workload is bound to increase, so any help is appreciated. Considering how he might help with chores around the inn, he turns back to Hana. He offers her a sauce he made with red wine, suggesting she try it with the bread. Holding a surplus of bread, Hana looks at him, seemingly overwhelmed and at a loss for words. He watches with a gentle smile as Hana and Tsuku heartily devour the meal, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. Holding his own mug, he muses that being an adventurer seems to mean being able to do just about anything. Hana, looking up from her plate, insists it was just a coincidence. She explains that she originally learned to cook not just because she liked it, but because she wanted to be useful to her party. She had an idea to contribute, but it seems it didn't go as planned. As she speaks, Rahito recalls other adventurers praising his own cooking, saying it energized them, and realizes he learned the skill quite naturally. He smiles warmly, dismissing her concerns as nothing to worry about. Flustered, Hana tells him he shouldn't be so casual with an adventurer. His gaze softens as he looks at her, then at Tsuku, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. With her eyes closed in contentment, Hana reflects internally. Even if their meeting was a coincidence, he has become a part of her life now, and she is perfectly fine with that. Rahito considers this. When he made the meal, his only thought was that he wanted the two of them to enjoy it together. As if on cue, Tsuku cheers that he loves his food, confirming the sentiment. He then asks Hana if it's truly all right for him to be there, given the circumstances of his arrival. He admits to her that he genuinely enjoys cooking. Across the table, Hana listens as Tsuku lets out a contented yawn. Later that night, as Rahito prepares for bed, Tsuku perches on his head with a bold suggestion. He asks what Rahito thinks about taking over the management of the eatery himself. The creature continues to press the idea as Rahito lies in bed, reminding him that he just admitted to liking cooking. Rahito lets out a weary sigh, trying to settle down. He sits up abruptly, grabbing Tsuku. He firmly states that this isn't something to be considered lightly, reminding his companion that this is Hana's precious inn. Looking out the window of his immaculately clean room, he observes how well cared for the inn is, even in the master's absence. The dedication is palpable. He concludes that he can't just start a business here, especially since he still wants to continue being an adventurer. He turns to Tsuku with a new thought, asking so. He laid out his plan to Tsuku, explaining that before anything else, he needed to take responsibility and fully understand the state of the village's eatery. Only then would he proceed. Tsuku listened intently as Rahito, impressed by his own resolve, declared his first stop would be the Adventurers Guild. The next morning, on his second day in the village, he set out with Tsuku perched on his shoulder. As Hana worked nearby, he cheerfully remarked that he needed to take care of some business to prevent his guild card from expiring. He was, after all, a B-rank adventurer. At 40 years of age, he had established himself as a skilled enchanter. He admitted to Tsuku that since he was starting from scratch, he'd have to take on simpler tasks. While full-on monster subjugation might be too much for now, he was confident he could handle requests like herb gathering. A sense of confidence washed over him. He looked at his small companion and felt that together, the two of them could accomplish anything. His optimistic reverie was suddenly broken. He stopped, a questioning look on his face, as his attention was drawn to a figure walking down a nearby stone corridor. The man had silky, blonde hair and carried himself with the posture of a knight, possessing a princely handsomeness. Rahito, taken aback, realized they were unexpectedly close to the inn. He called out the man's name in disbelief. Minaru. Rahito stepped forward, demanding to know why the one known as the magic sword was in this place. In a quiet courtyard, Rahito and Minaru stand near a fountain topped with a statue of a hooded figure, marking the beginning of a new chapter in their journey. Minaru confronts Rahito, identifying him by his full name, Minaru Air. He recounts Rahito's reputation as a water and ice attribute magic sword, an A-rank solo adventurer capable of using all forms of magic, and questions why someone of his stature would be in the humble Ruijie village. As Rahito stammers, Tsuku wonders if this is the Aniki he's heard about. Just then, Minaru's former party, Riramu, Ritentsu, and Winto, arrives, overjoyed to see him. They exclaim his name, recalling that he was a promising adventurer who had been kicked out of his party, while Riramu seems particularly captivated by his presence. He curtly dismisses them, ordering them to stop dawdling and return to the capital. Riramu attempts to speak with him, calling him Rahito, but he ignores her, leaving Rahito to watch in silent confusion. Turning his attention back to Rahito, Minaru playfully ruffles his hair, remarking that he's gotten bigger. Rahito laughs, pointing out that it sounds like something an old man would say to his son, earning a sharp retort of idiot from Minaru. Elsewhere, a conversation unfolds. Riramu recalls Minaru teaching her when she was 15, noting how he's grown taller. She mentions that she wanted to tell him something once he became A rank, before asking about Rahito. Suddenly, Rahito is confronted by another group of adventurers. Their leader, a burly swordsman, asks if he was part of the Spear of the Wind God party, calling him a nuisance. Rahito recognizes them as the party he had quit just the other day. From a distance, Minaru watches with amusement. He explains that he intentionally left Rahito behind, knowing the party only wanted a strong fighter and that Rahito wasn't an attack mage. He simply let them have what they wanted. His amusement vanishes, replaced by a glare of pure malice directed at the oblivious Rahito. As a chill runs down his spine, Rahito nervously remarks on the sudden murderous aura emanating from Minaru, thinking how scary his old acquaintance can be. Ignoring the feeling, Rahito explains to a curious Tsuku that he was sent here on a request from the capital. From the archway, Minaru's voice cuts in, demanding to know why he is truly there. He observed the quiet village, noting to Minaru that the number of adventurers serving as its base of operations seemed to be decreasing. Rahito mused that this must be why Minaru, being an A-rank adventurer, was so particular about maintaining his own base here. He understood now. Minaru then asked how he was managing. With a cheerful grin, Rahito explained that he simply cooked for himself, to which Minaru coolly replied that he could do the same. His demeanor softened as he recalled a soup Rahito had once made, admitting it was delicious and that he remembered it well. Minaru added that Rahito's support magic had excellent synergy with enhancement effects. Rahito, taken aback, stammered that the idea of applying support magic directly to objects was something he'd never even considered. The pleasant moment shattered when Minaru accused him of using people like him. Rahito, confused by the sudden shift, pleaded with him not to be angry. Minaru then revealed a startling fact. He had never considered asking Rahito to join his party. It was Rahito who had made the offer. Stunned, Rahito could only ask why. Looking away with a slight blush, Minaru dismissed the question, claiming he simply wanted to support a young man who was earnestly chasing his dream. Tsuku, however, seemed to doubt his sincerity. Rahito's expression hardened with resolve. He told Minaru to recognize his own value and stop underestimating himself, declaring that he would take responsibility. Their conversation drew the attention of the guild master, who approached and asked Minaru what was happening. In response to the guild master's inquiry, Minaru turned and, with a straight face, made a shocking declaration. Rahito was his master. The statement left Rahito utterly speechless. His mind reeled. He had accepted the earlier request, but this new development was beyond comprehension. He couldn't understand why Minaru would say such a thing. Grabbing Minaru by the shoulders, Rahito demanded an explanation, insisting that he had never taught him anything about being an adventurer. Minaru simply smiled, calmly stating that Rahito had taught him many things. Minaru then formally asked Rahito to undertake a quest with him. As Rahito sputtered in confusion, Minaru clarified. He explained that he became an A-rank adventurer at 18 for a specific reason, and that in the time leading up to it, he had only ever received a healing spell once from Rahito. For that single act of kindness, he had been incredibly grateful. He and Rahito listen as the guild master, a man named Morik, formally accepts their partnership for a simple monster subjugation request. Morik explains that while an A-rank mage is stationed in the village, Minaru often handles these types of exterminations, and this quest is no different. As they stand together, Rahito asks if the target is a monster this time. Minaru confirms it is, prompting Rahito to observe that Minaru seems to be choosing jobs that put his fire-based skills at a disadvantage, wondering if they don't get along well. In response, the guild master reveals the creature's identity, a nerdy bird, a high-ranking species of flame bird. The announcement startles Rahito, who has never heard of such a creature. On his shoulder, Tsuku suddenly squeals, a look of dawning horror on its face as it remembers something crucial. He attempts to reassure them, promising his support if anything goes wrong and instructing them to get details on the creature's location and habits from Minaru. He adds that the Knights of Ru are in contact with the village, so reports are easier to come by at night. Walking through the guild hall, Minaru internally reflects on the village's defenses. He notes that the guild staff works the night shift to watch for suspicious activity and share intelligence with the knights, an ideal arrangement. He muses that this border town is blessedly far from the troublesome politics of the capital. His thoughts are interrupted when Rahito remarks that entrusting the border to such a small-scale operation is quite bold. Minaru agrees, confirming the battle will be at night. He then pivots, asking Rahito about the support magic he'd mentioned before, clarifying that he was referring to cooking. Rahito looks utterly bewildered by the question. Suddenly, Minaru's expression brightens with excitement as he asks if he can eat some too. Their conversation is cut short by Hannah, who storms towards them looking distraught. She shouts Rahito's name, demanding to know why he's going on a quest with Minaru without her. She grabs Rahito by his vest, frantically asking what he did to her. She explains that ever since she ate the food he prepared the day before, she hasn't been herself. Both Rahito and Minaru are stunned into silence, completely baffled by her accusation. Her frantic energy shifts to pure adoration. With a blissful expression, Hannah gushes that she's now on a quest with Minaru, all thanks to Rahito. She marvels at how an A-rank adventurer can also be a skilled cook, declaring him to be amazing. As Hannah continues to shake him, Rahito has a sudden realization. He tells Tsuku that the food from yesterday wasn't a simple meal buff, it was a charm spell. Hannah, meanwhile, exclaims that the wash basin she was carrying felt surprisingly light, oblivious to the magical influence affecting her. He suddenly remembered the other effect he'd forgotten about. The support magic imbued in his cooking also provided a slight boost to physical strength. Still clinging to him, Hannah exclaimed in awe, realizing this was the source of her newfound power. Observing the scene, Minaru commented with a gentle smile that Rahito seemed unaware of how special his own magic truly was. He then added that it must be a joy to see Hannah eat with such gusto. Hannah, still captivated, turned to Minaru, questioning his meaning. Rahito, sweating and flustered, marveled at how potent the charm's effects were. Minaru calmly reassured him not to worry, stating that he would handle the situation. Relieved, Rahito accepted the offer, asking only to borrow the kitchen. To provide a heat source, Minaru took a pinch of a substance and, with a simple incantation of flame, summoned a small, fiery elemental in a burst of magical energy. The elemental's power was channeled into a small griddle, which now glowed in Rahito's hands. As Minaru handed him an apron, he instructed him to get to work. Rahito affirmed, ready to begin. In the kitchen, Rahito announces his plan to cook a meal from his homeland using flour, cheese, and meat. He asks Minaru if he can handle making a simple dough, suggesting it's similar to an omelet's batter. While Minaru considers this, Rahito cheerfully instructs Tsuku to fetch the flour, who readily agrees. He then dramatically declares that he will be the one to cut the meat of a brown goat. He explains that with 3 or 4 people, one person can handle the prep while the others wait. The meat, he notes, comes from a creature with brownish fur known for its distinctively spicy flavor. As Rahito works with intense focus, it's noted that brown goats use earth magic to consume soil, which gives their meat a tough, muscular quality. The wild, strong flavor has a powerful elasticity that can be overwhelming. To prepare it, he finally chops onions and garlic, adding various spices and chili, before asking Tsuku for limes. Tsuku confirms the prep work is complete. With a pan sizzling on the heat, he turns to Minaru and asks about the dough. Seeing Minaru's uncertainty, Rahito thanks him for his effort and announces it's time to start grilling. Minaru, his heart pounding with nervousness, carefully pours the batter into the hot pan, asking if he should spread it thinly. Rahito reassures him, telling him not to be so tense and that any thickness will do, as it will cook quickly regardless. While the dough cooks, Rahito begins to grill the seasoned meat beside it. The sharp heat of the chili rises from the pan, creating an aroma that stimulates the appetite. He declares his intention to wrap the cooked meat inside the dough. The process is methodical. Once the dough is about 80% cooked, the meat and cheese are placed on one half. The other side is then folded over, encasing the filling, and left to heat for a few more moments. With that, the first cachapana is complete. The golden brown pastry is presented on a plate, its filling peeking out. Minaru looks on in awe as Tsuka marvels at the fluffy, melting cheese. Rahito smiles, announcing he'll quickly make 3 more. A fork lifts a piece of the dish, stretching the hot, melted cheese. Minaru gasps in amazement. Rahito urges them to eat while it's hot, confident that it's undeniably delicious. Together, all 3 take their first bite. Their expressions of surprise and delight confirm that the meal is a resounding success. He watches as Minaru takes a bite, his eyes widening in astonishment. Minaru shouts with delight, proclaiming the dish to be unbelievably delicious. He praises the combination of the rich cheese, spices, and the subtle sweetness of the dough, declaring it the best. Rahito simply offers a quiet thank you, as Aniki also devours his portion with gusto. Taking a sip from his glass, he finds himself at a loss for words at how good everything is. He suddenly recalls that he forgot to appraise the meal, wondering about the physical resistance up effect. Minaru, smiling, tells Aniki to concentrate on eating, and Rahito concurs, asking his companion to be patient. With the meal finished, Minaru thanks Rahito again. Rahito asks if the Shadow Wolves are still nearby, and Minaru confirms they are, suggesting they can have the leftovers, an idea Aniki eagerly supports. Minaru then volunteers to handle the cleanup, but Rahito suggests they can carry the dishes together. As they talk, Minaru explains that Aniki is his familiar and a specialist in spatial magic. He clarifies that while Aniki can't do everything, he possesses the ability to teleport any object he touches to another location within his line of sight. Aniki proudly demonstrates this power. With a flash of energy, Aniki activates his magic, causing the dishes to vanish instantly. The dishes are gone, and Aniki wags his tail with satisfaction. Rahito observes wryly that shouting doesn't seem to alter the effectiveness of the spell. A short while later, as Minaru tidies up the kitchen, he reflects on how nice this quiet time is. Rahito, however, stands by the doorway, his attention caught by something outside. He wonders if he heard someone just now and considers calling on the inn to see if they need anything. He begins to check his gear, confirming he has his sword, armor, and a good supply of potions. He muses that his preparations are sufficient, though a healer would be useful. Aniki, perched on a bag, reassures him that he'll be fine. The thought of their next destination, a tense and fiery mountain range, looms. Now outside, and walking through the village, Minaru catches up to him. He asks Rahito a pointed question. Has he ever cast support magic on himself? The query catches Rahito off guard, his expression turning serious. He hesitates before answering that he rarely, if ever, has. Minaru observes his troubled expression, noting that it's the same look he gets when he's about to retreat or give up. Rahito falls silent, his gaze distant as he contemplates the question. He tries to justify his stance, explaining that support magic is far more effective on someone younger and quicker. He admits he lacks any physical enhancement skills of his own, so applying buffs to others is simply more efficient than just talking about it. From the tall grass, Aniki seems to concur. His justification flusters Minaru, who quickly waves his hands in dismissal. He insists that wasn't his intention at all. He was simply impressed. Rahito looks on, taken aback by the unexpected praise. Minaru's expression turns serious as he elaborates. He points out that Rahito could have been a frontline fighter if he'd used support magic on himself, but instead, he's far too self-deprecating and treats himself with such carelessness. With a final, trailing thought, that's why he turns and walks away, leaving Rahito and Aniki standing outside the building. He stops and turns back, his gaze fixed on the stunned Rahito. I will prove your true strength, Minaru declares with conviction. Rahito can only stammer, questioning why Minaru would go to such lengths for him after they only shared a single bowl of soup. A memory of their shared meal surfaces. Minaru had praised the food they cooked together as the best, bringing a smile to Rahito's face. Reflecting on this moment, Rahito makes a decision. He resolves to trust Minaru, realizing that now it is his turn to rely on someone else. Aniki, lounging comfortably, chimes in with his own encouragement. He assures Rahito that Minaru is giving it his all, and because of that, everything will be all right. With their new understanding established, the group sets off. They journey toward the roosting grounds of the Blazing Bird, a treacherous, rocky landscape near the knight's garrison, a place where lingering is ill-advised. As a hearty stew simmers in a pot over a campfire, Rahito's voice breaks the evening quiet, posing a question to his companion. Was he born into a family of knights? From his seat by the fire, Minaru confirms that he is the second son and has an older brother. Rahito, tending to their meal, listens intently. He smiles warmly, remarking how nice that must be. He explains that as an only child from the countryside, he's quite used to fending for himself. Seeing Minaru's somber expression, Rahito's smile fades as he gently asks what happened to him. Minaru looks away, confessing that for various reasons, he ran away from home and was subsequently found. His gaze softens as he glances at the sleeping form of Tsuku, a silent testament to his recent journey. A fleeting memory surfaces, a younger version of himself, being presented with a sword by another boy, a moment tied to the reasons he left. By the next day, the two have ventured deep into a dense, rocky forest. Minaru is now clad in traveling gear, complete with a long cape, while Rahito stares in awe at the jagged, crystalline landscape before them. Rahito notes the unnatural appearance of the rocks. Minaru explains they are in the Yomi Forest at a nest rock, a place where A-rank, fire tribute monsters called wrath drakes melt stone to build their nests. He adds that such nests are usually found much deeper in the forest, which puzzles him. He observes the unsettling silence, noting the absence of even C-rank monsters. He theorizes the wrath drakes may have driven them all away. Rahito, with Tsuku perched on his shoulder, agrees they should scout the area. Suddenly, a sharp rustle from the nearby foliage startles Rahito and Tsuku. What was that? Rahito exclaims, spinning towards the sound. From the trees, an unseen voice calls out, chiding them for being loud and addressing Rahito directly by name. Rahito freezes in shock as the voice wonders aloud who else besides their own group would be wandering through such a dangerous forest. He and Minaru are startled by the sudden appearance of three armored figures emerging from the dense forest. With his hand ready, Rahito shouts a challenge into the clearing, demanding to know who they are. The lead knight calmly reassures Rahito, stating that they are merely knights from a nearby company. His attention then shifts pointedly to Minaru, remarking that this is hardly a suitable place for them to meet. Recognizing the man, Minaru questions his presence, explaining that they are on a Wrathdrake subjugation quest and there should be no issue. The knight's face hardens, his jaw clenching in silent disapproval. Sensing the palpable tension, Rahito quietly asks Aniki what's happening. He recalls Morik mentioning that adventurers and the Knight Order were cooperating, yet he feels a clear animosity directed solely at Minaru. The knight leader turns a sharp gaze on Rahito, demanding to know why a B-rank adventurer he doesn't recognize would team up with someone like Minaru. Rahito demands to know what he means. The knight smirks, saying he'd heard Minaru was with someone. He then taunts Minaru, asking if he's going to tell his new partner about his past, or if that's something he's incapable of doing. Later, by a stream, Minaru reveals the truth. He is being pursued by the Knight Order. Rahito is stunned. Minaru clarifies that while he is permitted to be an adventurer, the knights are after the name Minaru itself. Meanwhile, Aniki offers a refreshing drink. Now sitting together, Rahito wrapped in a cloak, Minaru holds up a mug of lemon and honey juice. He mentions it's the same drink he once shared with Hannah, and offers Rahito a simple, heartfelt thank you. His gloved hands tighten their grip on the sturdy wooden mug. He looks at his companion, the memory of a previous conversation surfacing. Minaru had once told him that he became an adventurer because he had lost his way on the path of a knight. He looks at Minaru, suggesting that since he seemed unwilling to talk about it before, now might be a good time. He gently presses, asking if Minaru would be willing to speak, noting that the recent confrontation with the knights must be related. Minaru's gaze remains fixed, his expression somber as he considers the request. He begins to speak, identifying himself as a Hayato, or a swift one. He explains that he had always longed to become a splendid knight, just like his grandfather. His mind drifts back to a pivotal moment in his past. He reflects that everything changed from that time, when he was 6 years old and first acquired a skill. The memory surfaces of himself as a small child, sparring with his older brother with wooden swords. In the flashback, the young Minaru, with a determined cry, swings his wooden blade, shattering his brother's sword on impact. His brother, Lujuru, stumbles back. As their father approaches, Lujuru admits that Minaru is as strong as ever, while he himself is still weak. Their father comforts Lujuru, ruffling his hair and telling him not to worry. He then addresses Minaru, calling him younger brother, and assuring him that with his straightforward heart, he will soon catch up to Lujuru's level. The father looks upon them both, declaring with pride that they are the cherished sons of the Air family. He asks if they were watching him, and they both affirm that they were. The history of the Air barony is recounted. Minaru's grandfather, a hero who stopped the ravages of demons, established a lineage of knight barons out of loyalty to the Berezan royal family, dedicating their lives to the nation. This knightly spirit was passed down, and Minaru's father was officially granted the title in his stead. Minaru recalls how his brother, Lujuru, was raised under their father's guidance to be the next head of the family, a beautiful and intelligent successor. Becoming like him was Minaru's goal as well. He remembers calling out his brother's name, Lujuru. In the memory, his father reassures Lujuru, praising his skill as a wonderful blessing. The world's lore explains that at age 6, one acquires a skill. Minaru's grandfather possessed precognition, a power that secured the Air family status. His father hoped for a similar inheritance. But Minaru's skill is revealed to be divine bestowal, the power to grant a sword-like role to others. He stares in horror, realizing this is the skill of a mage, not a knight. His father, Baron Air, stared in disbelief, demanding to know what had just happened. He had heard rumors of such a thing, but to see it manifest was another matter entirely. Kneeling before his family, the young Minaru insisted that there was no mistake. He looked up, his eyes wide, and gave the skill its name, Magic Sword. It was a power that, as far as he knew, no one else in the entire country possessed. In the midst of the stunned silence, a servant's voice called for Lord Minaru, mentioning something about a fitting. The boy turned toward the sound, his mind still reeling from the revelation. He then crept to a doorway, where he overheard his father explaining the situation to an advisor. The man questioned why the second son, Minaru, was being prioritized over the heir, Lujuru. The Baron's voice was firm. He explained that Magic Sword was a special skill capable of countering any magical attribute. With such power, they could drastically reduce their reliance on mages, making Lujuru's own abilities pale in comparison. His father's words struck him with the force of a physical blow. The Baron turned, his expression severe, declaring that what the Air family needed above all else was a strong sword. With a dawning, painful understanding, the young boy could only whisper his brother's name. From that year forward, his older brother Lujuru joined the Order of Knights and ceased speaking to him. Minaru knew his father's words were likely inescapable, but he refused to let their bond be severed. For the next 5 years, he dedicated himself to swordsmanship, believing that if he could just become a knight, he could protect what was truly important. He held on to the hope that by becoming a splendid knight himself, the day would come when he and his brother could smile together again. This hope carried him to the day of his own knighthood trial. As the crowd murmured, an announcer called out, identifying Minaru of the magic sword as the next candidate. From a balcony, Lijiru watched. Before the trial, he had asked his brother if he was still upset about that time. Lijiru, offering a placid smile, told him not to worry about it any longer. He stated that their father's decision was absolute and that he now wished for Minaru to inherit the family estate. His brother then looked at him with unexpected intensity, urging him to be more serious today than ever before. Lijiru promised to watch for the knight's heart within him, just as he had in their youth. Filled with a renewed sense of purpose, Minaru gave a firm, determined agreement. Inside a grand hall, a duel reaches its climax as a sword shatters into pieces. The knight whose blade has broken stumbles back in disbelief, facing his victorious opponent. The defeated knight stares at the hilt of his broken weapon, exclaiming that it was a magic sword and questioning how it could have been overpowered. His opponent, Lijiru, looks down almost dismissively, remarking that he's really done it now. He then looks up with a condescending smirk, declaring the match invalid. Lijiru taunts his opponent, stating that if a magic sword loses to the knight's order, then the matter of the next family head is settled. His gloating is cut short by the sharp voice of an instructor. The older man notes that the sword was checked for durability before the match and shouldn't have broken so easily. He turns a hard gaze on Lijiru, accusing him of using a skill in a contest meant to be one of pure swordsmanship. Lijiru immediately protests, insisting he did no such thing. He argues that if he had used a magic sword skill, the blade would have been visibly imbued with magic. He demands that they call an appraiser to verify his claim. But as he speaks, a close look at the broken cross-section of his opponent's sword reveals the undeniable trace of magic power lingering at the point of the break. The sight does not go unnoticed by the crowd. Onlookers murmur amongst themselves, questioning if a skill that imbues a blade with magic was used on Lijiru's sword. Though one dismisses it as unlikely in a simple apprentice trial, another insists that an appraisal would confirm it. Their speculation is cut short as the instructor grabs Lijiru's shoulder with bruising force, his face contorted with rage. He bellows for the young knight to know his shame. He continues his furious tirade, declaring Lijiru a disgrace who has twice sullied the honor of the Knight's Order by committing an injustice within its sacred ranks. The accusation strikes Lijiru, and his mind flashes back to a memory. He recalls his father, Baron Air, telling him that until he could use his skill without anyone noticing, he was not to use it where others could see. The realization dawns on him. This entire event was a farce, a setup. He finally understood. His brother, Minaru, possessed no skill in earth or green magic, which meant the blessing of the earth must have been an artifact crafted from minerals. His father had known this all along and had commanded Minaru to keep it secret. The weight of this betrayal crashed down on him, mirroring his public fall from grace. The conspiracy, he later learned, was a sordid scheme orchestrated by the trial's instructor, who had since married into his family. It wasn't a grand plot by the nobility, but a petty maneuver. His possession of a rare skill had made him a liability, an inconvenient stain on the Air family's reputation that needed to be removed. To consolidate power, his father had arranged for his brother to marry the knight captain's daughter, securing the family's stability. All of Lijiru's own ambitions, to grow strong, to protect someone, had been sacrificed for political gain. He began to wonder if those desires had ever truly mattered. Bringing his story to a close, he looked at Rahito and Tsuku by the campfire, questioning why he was revealing so much. He confessed that he had wanted to tell someone for a long time, but never could. With a quiet apology, he stood and walked away into the darkness. As he left, Tsuku remarked that this was a good opportunity for Rahito. The creature revealed that the guild had introduced them precisely because they saw a good match. Alone, Lijiru sat and contemplated his lost path, adrift since leaving home and utterly unsure of what to do next. Rahito approached him, thinking that while the lives of knights and adventurers were different, the purpose of their swords, to protect others, was the same. He wondered if Lijiru was truly following the path of his ancestors. Breaking the silence, Rahito acknowledged how difficult it must be to abandon the Air family name. He continued, admitting it wasn't his place to say, but stated a simple truth. Nothing would change unless Lijiru himself changed. The directness of the statement caught the former knight by surprise. The words resonated within him. Lijiru considered what it would mean to use his skills as an adventurer, free from the constraints of status. He wondered if changing meant he had to swear a new oath to transform his very purpose. He looked at Rahito and saw a kindred spirit, someone who also fought to survive, driven by a powerful and respectable desire to protect. As Rahito offered him a bowl of soup, he affirmed that this desire was a noble one and urged him not to hesitate. He assured Lijiru that he was not alone. A memory surfaced of a time he comforted his younger brother, Minaru. For so long, Lijiru realized he had been a prisoner of his own skill. But looking at the man before him, he felt a sense of release. Rahito had saved him. With newfound gratitude, he spoke his name. Rahito holds his mug, his expression earnest as he speaks. He tells Lijiru that without their meeting, he wouldn't be the person he is now, though he admits he still has his own struggles. His words resonate with Ledru, who reflects that he never expected to have such a conversation. People change, he muses, and perhaps even he could become useful to someone. Nearby, Minaru offers a different perspective as he pets Tsuku. He notes that some things don't change, and that in itself is a source of happiness. His comment makes Rahito chuckle, slightly embarrassed. He admits this is the first he's hearing such sentiments, clarifying that his past pain wasn't from being exiled, but from learning the truth about Minaru. He looks out over the wilderness, reflecting on his 24 years as an adventurer and how unpredictable life can be. As night begins to fall, he decides it's time to resume the hunt for the Hellfire Bird, instructing Tsuku to pack up their gear. Minaru agrees. The quiet moment is shattered by a sudden, violent blast of dark fire that tears through their campsite. Lujiru shouts a desperate warning to Rahito, whose face contorts in shock. The explosion throws him backward, splintering his chair. As he stumbles, the immense, fiery form of a winged beast descends upon them. The creature lets out a deafening cry, revealing itself to be the very monster they were seeking, the Hellfire Bird. Its sudden appearance throws the group into a panic. Rahito shouts for Tsuku to stay close, while Ledru rapidly analyzes the A-rank beast's attributes, fire resistance, water weakness, and its apparent pursuit of another creature. He turns to Rahito, pleading for protection. He drew his sword, his expression hardening with resolve as the massive creature loomed before them. Behind him, Minaru grinned with a mix of excitement and awe, marveling at the bird's immense size and questioning if they could truly handle such a foe. But Rahito's mind was already made up. They had to fight. There was no other option. In a desolate, rocky clearing, Rahito and Minaru stand back to back, swords drawn in defiance of the massive, flaming avian creature descending upon them. With Tsuku perched on his shoulder, Rahito braces for the confrontation, marking the beginning of their fourth major trial. He shouts to Minaru, urging him to heighten his agility. With a shared understanding, the two warriors surge forward, their coordinated charge described as possessing the brilliance of a shooting star. The blonde swordsman dashes ahead, deflecting an unseen blow and shouting his thanks for the assistance. His gaze remains fixed on the Hellfire Bird as it looms before him, its body crackling with dark flames. He leaps into the air, unleashing a powerful technique he calls Aqua Blade. A torrent of water-like energy surges from his sword and strikes the creature directly, causing both Rahito and Minaru to watch with stunned anticipation. His attack passes harmlessly through the bird. Rahito realizes with a start that it's an illusion. He observes that the creature is quite intelligent, and its reactions are far quicker than theirs. As the illusion vanishes, the real bird materializes behind them, launching a fiery assault while Minaru grits his teeth in frustration. The creature screeches, thinking to itself that being airborne puts it at a disadvantage. It wishes it could somehow be brought down to the ground. Observing this, a sly grin spreads across Rahito's face as an idea begins to form. Suddenly, he stumbles dramatically, crying out that he's falling. Tsuku, caught by surprise, panics and yells for his Aniki not to fall. As Rahito continues the act, Tsuku calls out his name, a spark of realization in his eyes. Holding his small companion, he reveals the plan aloud. He will throw Minaru directly on top of the Hellfire Bird, making it an easy target. He explains the mechanics to a stunned Minaru. Tsuku can teleport anything he touches to a location within his line of sight. To demonstrate, Tsuku touches a small lantern, which vanishes and reappears instantly. Rahito winks, confirming it's a solid plan. His ally demands to know if this is Tsuku's plan, comparing it to a previous incident involving dishwashing. He questions why Tsuku would throw him, but his expression shifts to one of grim understanding. He realizes it's the same principle as before. Tsuku will fly him upwards. With a plan set, Rahito asks Minaru if he's ready to go. The swordsman confidently declares that he is. Nearby, Tsuku pats his own chest, affirming that he's prepared to teleport Minaru at any moment. Rahito shouts for Tsuku to initiate the teleport, but the small creature, now perched on his shoulder, suddenly looks up with a confused expression. He freezes, a critical flaw in their plan dawning on him. He realizes that with Tsuku on his shoulder, the creature would be teleported away along with Minaru. His concern is brushed aside as Minaru casually dismisses the issue. Tsuku, having already hopped onto Minaru's shoulder, wears a smug expression, seemingly pleased that his maneuver went unnoticed. In an instant, they materialize in midair, directly confronting the colossal Hellfire Bird. The fiery beast looms over them, its massive wings spread wide as Rahito watches from the ground below. The sudden proximity sends Tsuku into a panic, letting out a terrified shriek. Minaru yells at him to calm down, his own attention fixed on the monstrous bird. He unleashes his attack, shouting the technique's name, Aqua Blade. A slash of energy strikes the Hellfire Bird, causing it to cry out in pain. The successful hit appears to surprise even Minaru. From the ground, Rahito shouts Minaru's name, pointing towards the creature and yelling for him to aim for its white mantle. Hearing the instruction, the swordsman's expression shifts from a confident smirk to one of sudden, focused understanding. With his new target identified, he immediately changes course, diving toward the Hellfire Bird's back where a patch of white plumage is visible. The weak point Rahito had spotted. He lands beside the fallen beast, its fiery form extinguished. Rahito claps him on the shoulder, a look of exhausted relief on his face, congratulating him on a job well done. Their attention turns to Tsuku, who stumbles about, dizzy from the exertion. Rahito asks with concern if he is all right, while Minaru praises the small creature, acknowledging that his quick thinking was instrumental to their success. With the immediate danger past, Rahito asks about their next steps regarding the creature's carcass. Minaru proposes a plan. They will have Tsuku teleport the bird directly to the guild, where its valuable materials can be sold at the dismantling shop. Rahito readily agrees. As night falls, blanketing the rocky landscape under a canopy of stars, Rahito turns to Minaru with a newfound conviction. He declares that their victory has finally proven Minaru's true strength, asserting that he is undoubtedly on par with an A-rank adventurer. Minaru tries to brush off the compliment, but Rahito vehemently refuses to let him, his expression turning serious as he insists on the truth of his words. He continues, urging Minaru to accept the assessment honestly. Minaru considers this, then explains that the reputation of being able to use support magic that can boost the true strength of an A-rank powerhouse is valuable. He suggests they just leave it at that. Just as Rahito remarks that it's getting late enough for dinner, a woman approaches their camp. She offers to prepare a meal, specifically mentioning that she will make Rahito's soup. The tension breaks as the three companions erupt in a joyous celebration of their hard-won victory. Rahito throws his arms up, shouting in triumph, while Tsuka cheers alongside him. With the matter settled, Rahito happily agrees to Minaru's proposal. Meanwhile, the woman who offered them soup is seen more clearly. She walks through a settlement, greeting a guard, before turning her attention to an unseen person. She identifies herself as Abikian, stating that they are the one who requested an audience with her. A trio of adventurers presents themselves with bravado. Their leader, Wento of the B-rank party, Wind God's Lance, gestures forward, introducing his companions, Riramu, the mage, and Ritensu, the swordsman. The party directs their loud introductions towards a woman named Abikian, an A-rank healer, much to the shock of a nearby Rahito. Abikian, unimpressed, quietly asks them to lower their voices, internally questioning whether she should even meet with this boisterous group that just barged in. She recalls meeting the three at the guild's introduction. Wento seemed younger than she'd expected, and she found the mage, Riramu, not to be her type. Her thoughts then shift to Rahito, wondering what his intentions are for bringing such a party to her. Her internal complaints continue as she considers the prospect of teaming up with kids. She acknowledges that while Rahito is only 18, he has clearly endured a great deal. Her gaze drifts over to Rahito's former party members, who are gossiping amongst themselves. They remark that Rahito drew the short straw and that they were right to be concerned about his rural origins. Listening to them, Abikian begins to understand the situation. A faint smile touches her lips as the pieces fall into place. She remembers that the healer who was with Rahito before was also named Riramu. She deduces that this new party is looking for a member because their previous one quit on them. With this understanding, she turns to leave, reflecting on a bad habit of hers. Her high-level skills tend to attract people who just want an easy ride. It's a quality of the capital she despises. Rahito calls out, asking for her decision. He faces her with a bright, earnest smile, proposing they aim for A rank together. Abikian is taken aback by his straightforward ambition, questioning if he really means the top, while privately feeling refreshed now that Rahito's old party is gone. Unseen by the two, Wento's party smirks amongst themselves. They congratulate each other on successfully pushing the troublesome task onto someone else, planning to take the money and run off with the A-rank healer once she's secured. Rahito's hopeful expression shatters as Abikian bursts into laughter. With a wide, cheerful smile, she gives her answer. I hate it. His face freezes in utter shock. Observing her potential new party members, Abikian acknowledges their strength but feels a nagging suspicion about their recent battle. An old, familiar sense of curiosity, one that has led to trouble in the past, begins to stir within her. Deciding to investigate her feelings, she puts on a pleasant expression and asks if she might join them for a trial run. A large, bearded man in heavy armor, another prospective member, smiles broadly at her request. With the trial underway, Wento approaches Abikian, explaining that he had invited both her and a large warrior for the day's quest. The armored man, Haruga, agrees enthusiastically, remarking that their party composition is now perfectly balanced. He then introduces himself with a booming voice as Haruga, the tank, asking Abikian to look after him. She formally introduces herself as a healer in return. Surveying the path ahead, she silently worries if this group can truly handle their target, a venom worm. Haruga elaborates on the threat, warning that the venom worm is an earth elemental monster with a dissolving poison and that they must be careful. He then mentions that because Abikian is B-rank, they were forced to take on a quest of matching difficulty, a fact he seems to find regrettable. Riramu dismisses his caution, telling Abikian not to worry about the poison, as she is more interested in the monster's hide bounty. As Riramu complains about her own skills drawbacks, Abikian overhears Haruga telling Rittensu it's a shame Rahito isn't there, as a storage skill would be useful. Hearing Rahito's name, a realization dawns on her. She connects the dots. Winto's sudden invitation, the trial run, the talk of money, and it all begins to make a sinister kind of sense. Her suspicions are confirmed when Winto reveals his true intentions. He declares that once she joins, their profits will increase, allowing them to buy new weapons and avoid paying their debts. He confidently tells her to look forward to it, as Haruga and Rirama laugh at the messy plot. As the party proceeds through a grassy field, Winto warns them to be careful, as the venom worm favors the area. Suddenly, Abikian stops dead, calling out Winto's name in alarm. Riramu turns as Abikian looks down in shock, exclaiming about her shoe. The source of her alarm is clear. The sole of her shoe is rapidly dissolving, eaten away by the venom worm's poison. Winto stares in disbelief, asking when it could have happened, while Riramu clasps her hands in morbid fascination, finding the sight disgusting yet amusing. Her predicament draws an immediate, panicked reaction from Haruga, who flinches back and demands to know why she didn't notice the poison sooner. He asks if her magic is strong enough to deal with it, prompting the party's swordsman to clarify that he can't help, as he doesn't possess the appraisal skill. She responds to his outburst with a calm, almost smug smile, assuring him that, of course, she can handle something like this. After all, she reminds him, she's an A-rank adventurer. Despite her confident words, as she holds her hand over the dissolving remains of her boot, she inwardly admits that neutralizing the poison is proving to be quite difficult. The rest of the party watches her struggle from a safe distance. Her lack of immediate success draws criticism from the others. Winto impatiently asks if she's done yet, while Haruga clicks his tongue in annoyance, muttering that she's not very impressive for an A rank. The swordsman agrees, noting that her magic seems too delicate for such a potent substance. The party's pigtail-wearing warrior laughs aloud, declaring that she knew this would happen. She mockingly apologizes for Abikian's lack of strength, adding that it was a good thing they turned down the quest at the guild. Her comment seems to trigger a memory for Haruga, who suddenly asks if Rahito also possessed the appraisal skill. At the mention of the name, Abikian's expression shifts to one of genuine surprise. He turns to Winto, a look of dawning horror on his face. Haruga realizes they made a terrible mistake, recalling that Rahito didn't just have storage, but 2 separate storage items. He laments that they drove away someone truly valuable. Just as their regret sinks in, the ground trembles and the source of the poison erupts from the foliage. A massive venom worm lunges toward the adventurers, its circular, tooth-lined maw wide open, aimed directly at the still incapacitated Abikian. The sudden ambush snaps Abikian into action. Annoyed, she declares they'll just defeat the venom worm quickly. She immediately begins issuing orders, placing Haruga behind her in the vanguard and telling him to form an attack line. She then points forward, shouting for Rittensu to advance, much to the confusion of the dark-haired swordsman she addressed. She follows up her command with a grin, shouting for Haruga and herself to rely on improvisation. As the others react with disbelief, she explains that a detailed plan wouldn't work anyway, and that the vanguard job is simply to block the monster's attacks. Her strange command is met with immediate confusion. Winto questions if she's a support mage, to which she replies that she's a healer, and this wasn't part of the request. Haruga bellows in frustration, asking how she could not know something so fundamental and demanding she cast on him as well. Amidst the chaos, Rahito shouts for Abby to grant him lightning-like ferocity. She tries to explain the principle of support magic. It's a spell that enhances an object's inherent magical properties. To cast it, the user must first recognize the target's magic, and then apply their own to amplify it. Haruga, still not grasping the concept, simply tells her not to hold back, as Haruga dismisses the idea as impossible, noting that Rittensu has little magic to begin with. The venom worm strikes. Its massive tail whips through the air, descending upon the stunned party. Just as it's about to hit, a powerful voice cries out, "Lance of the Earth." The attack is intercepted by the pigtail warrior, who has conjured a massive earthen lance to block the blow. She turns to Riramu, thanking her for the assistance. Nearby, the dark-haired swordsman prepares to charge, declaring it's his turn. Rahito watches in disbelief, realizing that with the one-hit wonder skill active, nothing will be able to stop the swordsman. The dark-haired swordsman's spear attack ricochets harmlessly off the hide of a massive, shelled beast. Below, the pigtail warrior notes the creature's incredible toughness, observing that it's completely unscathed. Seeing his companion's lack of power, the burly swordsman, Winto, steps forward, declaring that he will handle it. She watches in alarm, realizing his greatsword requires a two-handed swing that will leave him wide open. With a roar, he brings the massive blade down, but it shatters spectacularly against the creature's impenetrable shell, the force of the impact throwing him off balance. Just as the beast prepares to counterattack, a shimmering, light shield materializes, deflecting the blow. From a safe distance, Abby had cast the spell. The pigtail warrior breathes a sigh of relief, acknowledging that Abby saved them from a perilous situation. Unseen in the undergrowth, a different monster emerges, a massive venom worm. It observes the fight, thinking to itself that it has no need to fear poison and wonders why the adventurers failed to use defensive magic from start. The worm lunges from the trees. The pigtail warrior screams for her party to run, but the creature declares that it will not let them escape. As the adventurers flee, Haruga turns to Abi, questioning why they are chasing after them. He argues that the group clearly couldn't handle the situation and that it's too dangerous. Abi replies that she doesn't understand it either, but she doesn't know what's going on. The trio of adventurers continues their desperate retreat through the forest, with the pigtail warrior crying out that it's impossible. From behind, Abi's voice calls out to them, trying to get their attention. She quickly outlines a strategy for fighting the venom worm, reminding them to be wary of its poison and tail. She proposes that Haruga defend against the pigtail warrior's attacks, while the others focus on the monster. Haruga readily agrees, relieved to have a clear plan. The burly swordsman rejects her counsel, asking if that's the standard way to fight. He tells her not to interfere with their methods, insisting that this is how they have always operated. In response, Abi offers a faint, knowing smile. Her smile vanishes, replaced by a look of concern. She wonders to herself if he is simply having a bad day. After all, she remembers a time when he could have crushed an opponent like this with ease. She watched as her words struck the party she had just saved. The burly swordsman's face contorted with indignation as he demanded to know if she truly thought their strength was so meager. His companion, the dark-haired swordsman, questioned if their ability to fight effectively had been solely due to her support magic. The tension grew palpable. The pigtail warrior, sweating nervously, worried that they were about to be angered. Abi, however, looked on with a hint of frustration, thinking to herself that she should have simply told them everything from the start. She continued her explanation, clarifying that while she possessed a great deal of magical power, casting simultaneous support spells was normally an impossible feat. What she had just done as an enchanter, she stressed, was something exceptionally special. Her claim left the party visibly stunned. She elaborated that if they were to accept her display of power as the norm, then the performance they just gave was indeed their true strength. This was especially true for their leader, whose innate magical capacity was particularly low. The dark-haired swordsman's shock quickly curdled into anger. He challenged her, asking if she was implying they were useless. He reminded her that their leader had always instructed them to rely on his strength enhancements, questioning what she meant by it all. His words gave her pause. She found herself intrigued by the very concept of skill that could apply support magic to objects. The ability was fascinating. Realizing she was getting sidetracked, she mentally reined herself in, deciding she had said enough. Taking charge, the dark-haired swordsman delivered a final ultimatum. If their methods were not to her liking, he declared, then they would all simply pretend the conversation had never happened. With that, he turned his back, his party following suit. She and Haruga watched them apart. A wave of regret washed over her as she realized she had mishandled the situation entirely. Haruga glanced down at her as she stammered, chastising herself for getting too heated and speaking so bluntly. The other party was now just a distant silhouette on the path ahead. Regaining her composure, she reflected on the failed exchange. She admitted to herself that she had been harsh, but had hoped to gain something from them. Ultimately, she concluded that the problem was their own, sighing at the troublesome outcome. She listens as the large warrior, Haruga, apologizes for the unpleasantness of the prior encounter. He dismisses it, stating that they were in agreement anyway. He then remarks that only those who can truly trust one another are able to fight back to back. He lets out a hearty laugh, calling himself a good person, but admitting the situation is a shame. He had been looking forward to seeing the young adventurers who had risen through the ranks so quickly with his own eyes, finding the whole affair rather strange. As he muses, she finds that speaking with him isn't unpleasant. She then makes a proposal, asking if Lord Haruga would accompany her to Rui village. He asks for clarification, and she explains it's a village along the eastern border. The large man recalls that he had wanted to meet her before he was set to board a ship. Her expression saddens as she reflects on how little she must have meant to the previous party. Seeing this, Haruga tells her not to look so down, explaining that his concern actually stems from reports about monster movements. He elaborates, mentioning a past monster disaster near the border. He'd heard an acquaintance from Bowden had gone on an expedition to that area, and asks if she knows anything about it. The question startles her. Her mind flashes to a conflict between monsters and people near the border some 40 years ago, a time when she was no longer able to be of use. Shaking off the memory, she asks him again about Rui village. He explains that people from both nations have been traveling between the two regularly. He adds that he still wishes to learn and grow stronger, then asks what she intends to do now that they've finally met. Abi considers this, a faint smile appearing as she concludes that Haruga is a genuinely good person. She internally admits that while she had planned to ask Rahito about him at the guild, she has yet to witness the full extent of his power and cannot let such a perfect opportunity pass. Deciding to put those thoughts aside for later, she agrees to his proposal. Of course, I'll go with you, she states. As they walk off together down the path, Haruga seems to accept the necessity of their journey. On a dirt path winding through a grassy field, a woman in a dark witch's attire walks with determined steps. In the distance, Rahito and Minaru stand waiting, the mountains looming behind them. Their recent mission comes to mind. Their first monster subjugation in Rui village, where they successfully defeated an A-rank Hellfire Bird. After the battle, they had spent the night at a rocky campsite to ensure no other beasts were nearby. The memory of the fight still seems to trouble Tsuku, while Rahito grimly recalls their meal of cooked monster. Returning to the present, the witch continues her steady approach. Tsuku, perched on Rahito's shoulder, observes that she has been following them for some time. Minaru suggests that once they reach the village, they should report to the guild and then part ways. Just as he finishes speaking, the woman's voice rings out, calling Minaru by his full name, Minaru Heir. Both men turn around, their expressions a mixture of shock and surprise. She strides forward, pointing her staff accusingly at Rahito. She demands to know who the old man is. Rahito, a smirk playing on his lips, seems amused by the label, wondering to himself if she could possibly be referring to him. He quickly recovers and explains to a confused Minaru that the woman is Belra Dia Burton, also known by the moniker Ash. Rahito adds that he's heard of her before. The woman, Belra, seems to have a flash of recognition, wondering if Rahito is the person she saw at the eatery the day before. She clutches her hat, her face flushing with sudden agitation. She shakes off the thought, her anger returning. She admonishes Rahito for speaking so casually, declaring that Minaru Heir is not a cook, but a B-rank adventurer and her colleague. Minaru tries to placate her, while Rahito processes the surprising news. In response to her declaration, Rahito introduces himself as a sorcerer. He explains that he only arrived in Rui village a few days ago and is staying at Hana's Inn. Belra simply turns away with a dismissive scoff. His group is confronted by Belra's sharp, accusatory voice. She demands to know why Minaru would bring a seemingly useless man with him, insisting that anyone accompanying him to this village should at least be competent. Rahito is left speechless by her outburst, but Minaru calmly advises him to pay her no mind. Turning her back on them, Belra warns them not to get in her way before offering a final, softer instruction for Minaru to be careful. As they walk away from the encounter, Rahito offers an apology, which Minaru dismisses. Rahito then confirms his suspicion, asking if she was the flame mage Minaru had mentioned was supposed to handle the job. Minaru affirms that she is. He then elaborates on her personality, explaining that Belra has an extreme aversion to men from outside the village. This quirk has led her to turn down numerous requests, making collaborations with her quite difficult. He reassures Rahito not to take her harsh tone personally, explaining that she isn't singling him out. As they speak, Belra can be seen walking alone through the village streets ahead of them. Their path takes them through the town square, toward a large, prominent building with arched doorways that serves as the local adventurers' guild. Inside, they are greeted by the guild master, Morik, who confirms that the Hellfire Bird subjugation was completed safely. Minaru expresses his surprise at their speed, but Morik is quick to give all the credit to Rahito. He humbly deflects the praise, insisting he was merely providing support. Morik counters this, remarking that simply being able to keep up with Minaru is an incredible accomplishment in its own right. The guild master continues, explaining that the number of active adventurers has been dwindling, making things difficult for the village. He notes, however, that their recent success was thanks to a certain young lady. When Minaru asks for clarification, Morik specifies he is referring to Lady Belra. The name catches Rahito's attention, and he realizes with surprise that she must be the one who has been so outspoken about the village's affairs. He is taken aback when Minaru suggests they stay in Rue village for a while longer. The guild master questions Minaru's decision, asking if he isn't returning to the capital. Minaru confirms he will eventually, but for now, he wants to remain with Rahito, apologizing for his selfish request. His mind drifts to the village of Rue. He realizes there is something he has wanted to do since arriving, something he feels he must express. As Minaru informs the guild master that he's staying at Hana's Inn for the week, Rahito's resolve hardens. He knows he can't stay there indefinitely and decides to voice his true intentions. He announces his plan with conviction. He wants to open a buff food eatery in the village. The declaration hangs in the air, surprising both Minaru and the guild master, who question the concept of buff food. He explains that he has always loved cooking for his party members. He believes that by applying various enhancements to the food, it can become more than just sustenance. It can become a source of strength. He elaborates, convinced that by combining his appraisal skill with his support magic through cooking, he can become a true asset to the adventurers in the village. Minaru thoughtfully considers the proposal. He understands Rahito still wishes to be an adventurer and suggests this new venture could be combined with that life, perhaps by accepting quests for ingredients. Aniki enthusiastically agrees with the idea. The idea sparks a realization in him. He considers how combining his storage ability with Aniki's power could make it all possible. The guild master listens, murmuring his understanding of the buff food eatery concept. The guild master, wiping his glasses, expresses his skepticism, noting he's never heard of support magic being applied to objects. Rahito admits he hasn't secured a location yet. The guild master then offers a provisional solution. If Hana's family agrees, Rahito can use their inn's dining hall until Belra returns. However, He cautions that outsiders face significant challenges when trying to establish a business in the village. He acknowledges the difficulties but remains resolute. His ambition is simple. He just wants to serve his food to everyone in that dining hall. The guild master seems to grasp the earnestness of his goal. He beams, processing the provisional approval. He tells the guild master that while he isn't sure how Hannah's family will react, he firmly believes a proper dining hall is needed. As he celebrates, Minaru expresses his own excitement about finally getting to eat Rahito's cooking again. The guild master, however, notes that the timing is quite good, as someone named Seal is returning. Confused, Minaru asks who Seal is. At that moment, a small, crested bird swoops into the guild hall, startling the onlookers. It flies with purpose through a large archway, letting out a sharp cry. The bird circles back and lands gently on Minaru's shoulder. The guild master calmly identifies the creature as Seal's familiar. It begins chirping insistently. Rahito, sensing the urgency, asks Aniki if he can translate for the bird. Aniki confirms that he can, and the gravity of the situation immediately dawns on Rahito. Before Aniki can relay the message, an armored guard bursts into the room, shouting that a carriage bound for the village has been attacked by bandits. The guild master explains the grim reality. With adventurers leaving the village to deal with the Haikia, public safety has deteriorated. Rahito's expression hardens as he realizes this is a direct consequence of a larger crisis, a problem now manifesting on multiple fronts. The view sweeps across a vast, rolling landscape before settling on a cluster of jagged, crystalline rock formations piercing the sky. In this desolate terrain, a cloaked figure suddenly stumbles, dropping their supplies. Further ahead, Rahito and Minaru stand alert as a bird of prey circles above them. As the bird descends, Rahito and Minaru approach the scene, finding other adventurers collapse from exhaustion. Rahito wonders if the guild sent them, but one of the fallen men groans that the bandits have worn them all out. Looking up, they see a woman with a confident smirk, her avian companion perched on her shoulder. She thanks the bird for its report, remarking on its flashy lookout duty. She laughs, acknowledging that the bandits drew them out, but dismisses it as trivial. She explains that she and her father come to the village often for this very reason. Rahito stares, taken aback. The woman confirms that she, too, is on lookout duty. She then formally introduces herself to him as a B-rank adventurer and an acquaintance of Minaru's, having recently arrived in Rue Village. Rahito questions how Belra could have allowed her to live there, but the woman casually replies that she just whispered some sweet nothings to him. Minaru sighs, telling her not to mind Rahito. He admits he understands the feeling, as it's a bit hurtful to be treated this way every time, especially when they're the ones fighting bandits and hauling all the luggage by themselves. At that moment, a well-dressed man approaches, introducing himself as Single Amber, the woman's father. He explains that he runs a shop dealing in high-care products and asks Rahito to look after them. The woman, Amber, adds that their presence should be reassuring. Her father elaborates that he is the owner of the general store in the next town and stays at the branch here for about a week each month. He notes that his daughter's storage skill is a great help for his business, which prompts a look of realization from Rahito. Apologizing for her late introduction, the woman reveals her full name, Selen Amber. She states that her skills are storage and appraisal, and that she is an A-rank adventurer, just like Minaru. Rahito's eyes widen in utter shock. He stared in disbelief, questioning how she could possess two skills. He blurted out that the odds of such a thing are less than 1 in 1,000, calling them perfectly suited for a merchant. Selen laughed, confirming that her skills aren't meant for combat. She elaborated, explaining that her family home is filled with magical tools and everyday items, which spark her interest from a young age. This curiosity, she said, is what led her to become an adventurer, adding that being affiliated with the Merchants Guild is also quite convenient. As he processed this, Rahito realized this must be what the guild master, Morik, had been referring to. He concluded that she was certainly a person worth noting. Selen seemed to sense his realization, looking at him expectantly. Her attention then shifted to the creature on his shoulder. She gasped in amazement, identifying Aniki as Akiro Kataru. Aniki himself was taken aback, knowing his kind is highly cautious and rarely appears before people. Selen then asked if Rahito had a familiar contract with him. He corrected her, explaining that Suku has been his companion for 20 years. He then casually asked if the creature was truly that rare. Aniki chimed in, explaining that shortly after he was born, he and a companion were caught in a rampaging teleportation spell. He admitted he doesn't know much about his own kind, but affirmed that he and Rahito have been partners for a very long time. The story made Selen laugh warmly. She commented on their wonderful bond, adding that it's a shame some people treat their familiars as mere objects. She found their connection admirable. In response, she revealed that she also has precious companions. With a flourish, she introduced a massive wolf, Rue the Darkseeker, and the bird on her shoulder, Fu the Vitreous. Rahito and Aniki stared, stunned by the sudden appearance of the formidable wolf. She continued, explaining that Fu specializes in wind magic while Rue is an expert in darkness magic. The great wolf looked on, its gaze sharp and intelligent. He was deeply impressed by her companions, a sentiment Aniki echoed. Rahito reflected that while he has some magical ability himself, he is grateful for the help of his familiars. Selen smiled knowingly, remarking that being a merchant has its advantages, as information is crucial, and tapped her temple meaningfully. She presents Rahito with a scarf, explaining that it increases resistance to fire attributes. Rahito questions if it's a magic tool, and she confirms, adding that it doesn't use a magic stone for power. Instead, she clarifies, it can be activated with just a small amount of the user's own magic. He marvels at the scarf's impressive material, realizing how much time has passed. Selen announces that it's time for her to head to the village and find lodging. Minaru agrees, and Rahito suggests they should head to the guild, acknowledging they got carried away talking. As Selen departs, she waves, promising to speak with them again later. Watching her go, he seems quiet and thoughtful. Minaru wonders aloud how they managed to transport all their goods. Abby explains that they used Rue's darkness magic to keep monsters at bay. Rahito then realizes they must have used a storage skill to swap out the cargo in the horse-drawn cart, understanding the cleverness of their method. Minaru remarks on how dependable Selen seems to be. Abby concurs, adding that her abilities are impressively solid. He listens, lost in thought. An idea begins to form as he considers his own situation. He wants to run an eatery, and he possesses the skills of an A-rank adventurer, appraisal, and storage, while also being a merchant. His thoughts drift to Selen, a connection forming in his mind. The connection solidifies into a sudden, striking realization. Aniki, startled by his abrupt shift in energy, nearly loses his balance on his shoulder. With newfound resolve, he turns back toward the departing wagon. He declares that Aniki's cooking skills are a crucial asset, and that's all the justification he needs. It's fine, he says to himself, then calls out for the others to hurry and get on board. As their journey begins, Rahito's face is a mask of fury. He confronts a group of villagers, shouting that he won't forgive them for hiring the bandits who attacked the village and ordering them to be silent. Amber, equally incensed, steps forward, warning them not to play the victim and threatening to teach them another painful lesson. With the confrontation settled, they load the captured bandits onto the wagon and set a course for the city of Rueri. While the humans travel, the animal companions converse. Suku remarks to Fu that his mistress, Seal, seems to be quite a harsh master. Fu chirps in agreement, adding that Seal is also a wonderful person. Ru, listening nearby, comments that he has seen many people who can fly in his time. Hearing this, Fu turns to the large wolf, asking if his back is all right from the flight. Ru assures him it is. Fu then affectionately calls him Brother Ru, a title that seems to amuse Suku. The bird's term of respect sparks a conversation about their ages. Fu asks if Ru is older, to which the wolf replies that he is about 80 years old. Fu reveals that he himself was born about 100 years ago. Suku, listening in, exclaims that at only 20 years old, he is practically a baby compared to them. He elaborates that while magical beasts generally live longer than mundane animals, those possessing a magic stone, like himself, seem to have even greater longevity. He notes with some melancholy that he has never met another of his own kind. Ru adds that even within the same species, lifespans and the quality of one's magic stone can vary greatly. This leads Ru to wonder aloud if humans lack magic stones entirely. Suku confirms this, explaining that humans appear to have a different, superior mechanism for generating magical power, which is likely why their capacity for it is so vast. The wolf's attention then shifts to the front of the wagon, where he remarks that he can feel a pleasant magical energy emanating from Rahito. Suku enthusiastically agrees, confirming that his observation is exactly right. Puffing his chest out with pride, Suku explains that his Aniki possesses a rare special skill. While his aptitude is only for support magic, if he uses it to cook with ingredients rich in magical elements, the resulting dish becomes a form of supplementary magic itself. He proudly declares that he is also a demon of that magic. This information puzzles the other animals. Ru asks if this support magic is a skill-based, innate magic. Suku muses that if Rahito's skill is appraisal, it would have good compatibility with support magic. As Ru wonders about the nature of innate magic, their wagon finally arrives at the gates of a large, fortified city. Upon entering the city, Amber greets someone named Seal, thanking them for their cooperation while Rahito handles the procedures for their wagon. Rahito overhears Amber mention the name Belra and asks why she brought her up. Amber explains that the village's operating costs are paid from Belra's guild card, which was entrusted to them after a bandit incident. The revelation that a village has operating costs leaves Rahito momentarily stunned. Aniki clarifies that a guild card is a type of magic tool. Because it's imbued with the owner's magic, it cannot be used improperly by anyone else. He adds that the guild also functions as a bank, allowing the card to be used for financial transactions. From this, Aniki deduces that Belra must be the village chief. Just then, a young witch with curly hair and a large, rose-adorned hat rushes towards them, joyfully calling out to Silo Jusuma. Amber recognizes her as Belra and tells Rahito that she will get the details from her now, advising him to listen in. The witch gets uncomfortably close to Rahito, startling him. She demands to know what he's doing there, pointing out that his eyes aren't smiling. Amber quickly intervenes, chiding Belra for her forwardness and questioning her use of the formal ojusama. Belra retorts that since Rahito came with Minaru to drive out the bandits, she must thank him. He waves his hands dismissively, insisting that thanks aren't necessary. His casual refusal seems to only annoy Belra further, whose cheeks flush with irritation. She presses the issue, formally asking if she may offer her gratitude. Rahito sweats, flustered by her intensity and wondering what form her gratitude will take. Her offer turns out to be a sharp rejection. Belra declares that she has no need for a man like him in her party. Amber remarks that Belra is always like this with men and never teams up with anyone. Flustered, Belra denies this, claiming her issue is with Minaru being a nuisance. Exasperated, she brandishes her staff and shouts that she's had enough. Amber clarifies to Rahito that Belra doesn't hate men. She just won't party with anyone. She adds that Belra does occasionally accompany her. As she speaks, Belra walks away down the street in a huff. Just then, Minaru returns, asking if they've gone to the Dismantling house yet. He announces that his business with the thieves is concluded and he will be returning to his father's shop. Rahito confirms they are heading to the Dismantling house, and Amber directs him to go straight down the guild's hallway. He confirmed with Rue and Seal that he had something to discuss with them regarding sales, arranging to meet the next day. As they parted, he told them to give him a shout if they saw him at the shop. With a wave, he and Minaru also went their separate ways for the time being. Minaru acknowledged their plan to meet tomorrow, adding that Tsuku was likely eager to eat the Hellfire Bird, a sentiment Rahito laughingly confirmed. Later, at the dismantling area, a tray laden with 5 large, gleaming gold coins was presented. Rahito's eyes widened in amazement at the sight of their payment, exclaiming in delight as Minaru looked on with a satisfied smile. His joy quickly turned to disbelief as the reality of the sum sank in. He gasped Aniki's name, stunned that a single Hellfire Bird could fetch a price of 5 large gold coins. While discussing the sale with a local butcher, Rahito questioned if the price wasn't a bit low. The butcher explained that the market rate in this village was about 30% lower than in the capital, largely because the local consumption was much smaller and transportation costs had to be factored in. He elaborated that the village subsists almost entirely on monster meat, as there are no ranches nearby, forcing them to procure supplies from places like Haikia. He then asked if they had a direct sales route through a merchant named Crocktail, prompting Minaru to consider consulting with Morik on the matter. As they discussed splitting the earnings, Rahito insisted Minaru take half, but Minaru flatly refused. He declared that his only share was the official request reward and that the rest of the massive sum was Rahito's to keep. Stunned, Rahito could only stare as Minaru calmly instructed him to proceed. Minaru then revealed his condition for the arrangement. In exchange for the funds, Rahito would have to provide him with meals on a regular basis. Overcome with gratitude, Rahito tearfully accepted the promise. With the deal struck, Minaru announced it was time to head to the dining hall. Returning to the eatery, they were greeted by a cheerful Hannah, who welcomed them back and asked about their request. Rahito, beaming with pride, held up the pouch of gold and flashed a peace sign, announcing their success and the abundance of meat they'd brought back. From the kitchen, Hannah's voice carried out, confirming she was heading back to her station. She mentioned that she had already finished preparing lunch, her words echoing over the sight of a clean pan and bowl, ready for cooking. Inside the eatery, Minaru assures Rahito that any of his cooking is fine, so something simple will suffice. Rahito, holding a mushroom that Tsuko brought from the forest, agrees. Minaru's attention is caught by the ingredient, and he asks if it's a 2-tiered mushroom. The mushroom, found in the rocky domain of the Hellfire Bird, is a common brown variety with a unique structure. It grows in 2 distinct tiers, a thin, soft upper layer and a thick, meaty lower layer. This versatility, combined with its high magical energy content, makes it a prized ingredient. With this ingredient in hand, Rahito enthusiastically announces his plan for the evening's meal. Risotto using the bottom tier and grilled vegetables with the top. Behind him, Tsuko lets out a joyful roar of anticipation. He begins his work immediately, first calling for water and plunging his hands into a basin to start cleaning the ingredients. He meticulously washes the mushrooms, separating the tops and bottoms. Having gathered 10, he now has 20 pieces to work with. He tastes a piece, finding it sweet but acceptable. As Minaru offers to help, Rahito instructs him to simply wait and asks Tsuku to watch the stove fire, insisting the meal is his treat. As he works, Tsuku, holding a bowl, poses a question for his own study. He asks Rahito if he's familiar with the concept of innate magic. His question catches Rahito by surprise. Tsuku, with her looking on, explains that innate magic is a skill one is born with, a racial trait. It allows the user to wield great power with minimal skill due to their natural disposition. As Rahito prepares skewers of mushrooms and vegetables, Minaru elaborates. He confirms that these racial traits are also called unique skills. In contrast, acquired magic is an ability gained through time, experience, and the honing of one's magical aptitude. He processes this, noting that combat roles prefer acquired magic for its efficiency. Tsuka then asks if Rahito's appraisal skill is acquired magic, which he confirms. This surprises Minaru, who recalls Rahito casting support magic on 3 people at once. He questions how the magic consumption wasn't immense, admitting that he himself was exhausted after a similar feat. A look of concern crosses Rahito's face. He explains that while his appraisal skill can grant support magic to many, he hasn't fully mastered it. Unlike attack magic, the power difference isn't obvious. He realizes that if it truly is acquired magic, which he has only ever used on others, his own magical reserves should be insufficient for such feats. He turned to Minaru, voicing his sudden question. Was it possible that Aniki had intentionally done that? He admitted his own ignorance, explaining that he knew little of magic beyond his own skills. Minaru considered this, then agreed that consulting with a proper mage would be the most direct way to find an answer. Minaru then specified the mage he had in mind, Belra, but quickly added that asking her would be impossible. He shifted his focus back to Rahito, speculating that there must be some reason for his unique talents, and that this was likely why he could apply support magic to his cooking in the first place. Rahito listened, a look of confusion on his face. As Minaru's words sank in, a realization dawned on him. There was a significant reason he could apply enhancements to his cooking. As Rahito processed this, Minaru gently patted a contented Aniki on the head, telling him to just keep it in mind for now. He reflected internally on the situation, admitting to himself that he'd never imagined taking on an apprentice, especially not one with a job as rare as an enchanter. Inside a well-equipped kitchen, Rahito holds up a frying pan and asks Minaru if it will suffice for making risotto. Minaru, observing from the background, confirms that a pan or a pot would work fine, complementing the quality of the stove. With a sharp click, Rahito ignites the burner. He begins the process with Tsuku perched on his shoulder, explaining the first steps aloud. After warming oil in the pan, he adds the rice and begins to sauté it. He remarks that coating the grains feels like creating a protective shield with water to prevent them from breaking. As he stirs, he points out that the rice turning translucent is the sign that it's properly heated. With Tsuku exclaiming in agreement, Rahito announces the next step, adding white wine and letting the moisture cook off completely. Minaru observes that Rahito is quite skilled, to which he laughs, admitting he's been cooking for a long time. He recounts his first 10 years were filled with failures, but through trial and error, he learned to find his own way without a recipe. He then turns to Minaru, proposing that cooking and swordsmanship are fundamentally the same. His words strike a chord with Minaru, who realizes it truly is the same as the path of the sword. One must not fear failure, and must continue to build upon their training. He chuckles, adding that in the end, it's the finishing touch that matters. Returning to the risotto, Rahito adds broth once the wine has evaporated. He instructs Tsuku, who stands ready with a small pan, to prepare the finishing touches, butter, cheese, and a bit of salt. With a determined cry, Tsuku accepts his duty. The meal is complete. A grand feast of risotto and grilled vegetables covers the table. Rahito, Minaru, and Tsuku raise their plates and glasses, joyfully celebrating their mushroom festival. Tsuku digs into a skewer of grilled mushrooms, exclaiming how delicious it is. He proudly notes that he came prepared with water to counter the heat. Across the table, Rahito and Minaru begin to eat as well. A skewer is carefully prepared, with grilled vegetables neatly arranged before being offered to Tsuku. Following his lead, Rahito and Minaru both take bites of their own skewers. Rahito eats with gusto, while Minaru takes a more measured bite, both enjoying the fruits of their labor. He tears into the food with gusto, stuffing his cheeks as he and Minaru sit around a table laden with dishes. Across from him, Minaru watches with a mix of amusement and concern, asking if he's going to burn himself. Tsuku, perched amidst the plates, also partakes in the feast. In response, Minaru takes a large bite himself, his eyes clenching at the sensation. Rahito notices his companion's hesitation and asks what's wrong, observing that Minaru doesn't seem accustomed to eating so freely. He cheerfully encourages him to just dig in. A look of genuine surprise crosses Minaru's face as he processes the flavor, remarking on its sweetness. Rahito agrees, adding that the eggplant is also excellent. Minaru muses that vegetables are usually overshadowed by other ingredients, but when grilled so simply, their natural sweetness is brought to the forefront, a detail he realizes he and his former comrades had never appreciated. Nearby, Tsuku chews with pure delight, his cheeks full as he declares the risotto to be absolutely divine. Rahito looks down at his own bowl, agreeing that he found some excellent ingredients. He praises the firm texture of the rice and mushrooms, noting how perfectly they pair with the butter and cheese to create a rich, mellow flavor. A truly supreme combination. His praise prompts Minaru to confess that he has never eaten such wonderful food while out in the field. He remarks that once his request is fulfilled, he will have to leave. He then admits that he has rarely ever shared a meal with others, explaining that even dining with his family felt distant and formal. He gazes at his spoon, a faint, wistful smile touching his lips as he recalls that there was, however, one person with whom he shared a bond. His thoughts drift back to a time when this proud, dependable man told him something profound. That the happiness of those one fights alongside is a warrior's joy, and that sharing a meal with family and friends is a person's happiness. The memory solidifies, showing a younger Minaru among a group of knights. Their leader, Haruga, declared that receiving a request from Minaru's family and earning the trust of both parties was a great honor. Back in the present, Rahito listens intently and remarks that this man sounds like a good person, a sentiment with which Minaru quietly agrees. He then adds that it is an honor for him, too. He explains to Minaru that having a partner to dance with, someone to cook for, is a wonderful thing, far better than simply having someone to eat the food. As he speaks, Minaru gazes at Rahito's earnest reflection in the curve of his spoon. He busied himself preparing food, while Rahito set the table nearby. Catching his companion's attention, Minaru called out that he had a favor to ask. Rahito turned from his task, asking what he needed. In response, Rahito reached into a pouch and pulled out a weathered, broken piece of a wooden plank, holding it for Minaru to see. Minaru looked at the object, silently wondering what it could be. He explained that due to various circumstances, the plank was all that remained of his old sign. He admitted that he couldn't bring himself to throw it away, even after getting a new one, because it was too important. With a smile, he began to tell Minaru about a custom from his home village. The tradition, he recounted, was for lifelong companions to carve their names onto a sign at a designated spot. They would then gather there regularly to eat, drink, and share their time together. Rahito confessed that ever since leaving his village to become an adventurer, making this happen had been his one and only dream. He continued, clarifying that while they might not be family by blood, his goal was to find companions to gather and share meals with, just like one. This, he stated, was his ultimate objective. Holding out the plank, he formally asked Minaru if he would be willing to add his name to it. As Minaru looked on in surprise, Rahito smiled warmly and mentioned that someone else's name was already on it. Visibly moved by the offer, Minaru asked if it was truly all right for him to join them. Without another word, he reached out and accepted the wooden plank from Rahito's hands. He held the piece of wood with reverence, declaring it a great honor. As he did, Rahito suddenly called out for him to wait. Their attention snapped to the doorway. Hannah stood there, holding a bowl and smiling. She announced that she had overheard their conversation, surprising both of them. She then walked purposefully into the room, remarking that since the old sign was all that was left, it seemed a bit lonely. Rahito and Minaru watched her approach, waiting to hear what she intended. She warmly gestures towards the back of the eatery, offering them the rearmost table to use as they please. Her offer catches Rahito by surprise. Hannah explains that she isn't bothered by what they're doing. In fact, she's grateful that adventurers have taken the time to visit their quiet, rural village. He realizes her kindness runs deep. She appreciates that other adventurers have also grown fond of this place, making it clear even when he's not around. Overcome with gratitude, he grasps her hands and thanks her enthusiastically. Hannah beams, her eyes crinkling with genuine happiness at his reaction. As this unfolds, Minaru speaks up, reassuring Rahito that even if he doesn't make this village his permanent base, they can always return here together. With the decision made, Minaru places his hand on the wooden plank. As Rahito begins to carefully carve, Hannah quietly approaches Minaru from behind and embraces him in a warm, welcoming hug. The work is completed. Two names are now etched side by side into the wood: Minaru Air and Rahito Wells. They all gaze upon the newly inscribed plank. Rahito, tool still in hand, looks on with satisfaction, while Minaru and Hannah share in the happy moment. The atmosphere is filled with warmth and camaraderie. Hannah clings to Minaru's arm, laughing joyfully, as Rahito stands proudly beside his new companion. Seen from outside, the small group forms a picture of contentment. Rahito reflects internally, a profound sense of peace washing over him as he realizes that the companionship he had always longed for is finally